David Miller loved quiet weekends. After 5 long days working at the local hardware store, he always looked forward to Saturday afternoons. His favorite spot was his own backyard, where a sparkling blue pool waited like a private piece of calm. The pool was small but perfectly cared for, surrounded by smooth stone tiles and a short white fence that kept everything neat and safe. A line of tall maple trees stood at the back of the yard, their leaves turning a deeper green as the summer sun moved higher. On this particular Saturday, the weather felt perfect. Warm air carried the scent of fresh grass and a gentle breeze kept the day comfortable. David set a large pitcher of cold lemonade on the table near his lounge chair. He had a book ready, a mystery novel he had been saving for the weekend. For him, this was the picture of happiness: sunlight reflecting off the water, the soft sound of a small fountain trickling near the pool's edge, and the simple promise of a quiet afternoon. As he settled into the chair, David thought about how the pool had become more than just a place to swim. It was a part of his routine, a private retreat. He rarely invited anyone except a few close friends or his sister's family. He liked things peaceful, without surprise visitors or loud gatherings. His neighbors respected that. Most of them had their own busy lives and rarely asked for favors. David felt lucky to live in a neighborhood where everyone kept a friendly distance. He had just opened his book when he heard the faint squeak of the front gate. At first he assumed it might be a delivery person leaving a package, but the sound didn't stop. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path leading toward the backyard. David frowned slightly and set his book down. Visitors were rare, especially without a call or a message first. When he reached the side of the house, he saw his neighbor, Karen Bennett, pushing the gate open with a confident swing. Karen lived next door and had moved in about 2 years ago. She was known for her outgoing nature and her tendency to speak her mind. Alongside her stood a young woman David had never seen before. The stranger looked a little shy, holding a small tote bag and glancing around as if unsure she belonged there. "Hi, David," Karen called, flashing a bright smile as though she had been invited. "Hope you're having a nice Saturday. I wanted to introduce you to my stepsister, Lily. She's visiting for the weekend." David nodded politely. "Hello, Lily. Nice to meet you." He stepped closer to the gate, keeping his voice warm but cautious. Karen continued without pause. "It's such a hot day and Lily's been traveling for hours. We thought it would be perfect to cool off in your pool. We won't be any trouble, I promise. Just a quick swim." The request caught David off guard. His pool was private, and he had always been careful about who used it. It wasn't just about privacy, it was also about safety. His homeowner's insurance specifically required that he control access to the pool. If anything happened, he would be responsible. He took a slow breath before answering. "I'm sorry, Karen," he said gently. "I keep the pool private. I don't allow guests I don't personally know. It's a rule I follow for safety and insurance reasons." Karen's smile thinned. "Oh, come on, David, it's just water. We'll only be here a couple of hours. You know me." "I do," David replied, still calm. "But I don't know Lily. And I can't make exceptions. I hope you understand." Lily shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the tension. "Karen, it's okay," she whispered. "We can go somewhere else," but Karen waved her off. "No, it's not okay. It's a neighborly thing to share when someone needs help. He has plenty of space. Why be so strict?" David stayed steady, though inside he felt his heart beat faster. He disliked conflict, but he also knew he couldn't give in just to avoid a disagreement. "It's nothing personal," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I just can't allow it." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. She crossed her arms and stepped closer to the gate, as if physical presence might change his mind. "This is really unnecessary. It's a hot day. Lily just wants to cool off. We won't break anything. You're making this harder than it needs to be." The sound of her raised voice drifted across the yard, and David noticed movement from the corner of his eye. A couple of other neighbors were peeking from their windows and porches. He felt a wave of unease. He valued peace, not a scene that would draw attention. "Karen," he said softly, "please don't raise your voice. This isn't about being unkind. I just have to follow my own rules." For a moment there was silence except for the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then Karen let out a short, frustrated laugh. "You know what? If you won't listen to reason, maybe someone else will." Before David could respond, she pulled her phone from her pocket. He watched, puzzled and slightly alarmed, as she began to dial. Lily's eyes widened. Karen, no, please. Don't do that. Karen turned slightly away and spoke into the phone. Hello, yes. I need to report something. My neighbor is refusing to let us use his pool, and it's a serious situation. My sister needs a place to cool down and he's being unreasonable. David stood still, hardly believing what he was hearing. Calling the emergency number for something like this? It didn't make sense. He felt a mix of frustration and sadness. This quiet Saturday, meant for rest and reflection, was quickly slipping away into conflict. He didn't interrupt her call, though he wanted to. He simply waited, leaning lightly on the gate. Lily looked at him apologetically, her cheeks turning red. I am so sorry, she said in a small voice. I told her this wasn't a good idea. I really don't want to cause trouble. It's all right, David replied quietly. You don't need to apologize. I understand this isn't your fault. Karen ended the call and put the phone down with a sharp motion. They said they'll send someone, she announced, almost triumphant. Maybe now you'll see you can't just shut people out. David felt a heavy knot in his stomach. He had never faced anything like this. He respected rules, respected people, and always believed calm conversation could solve problems. But now flashing lights and uniformed officers might arrive because he simply wanted to protect his property and follow the law. He looked at Karen and said as evenly as he could, This isn't necessary. The authorities will tell you the same thing I have. But you're welcome to wait if you feel you must. Karen didn't reply. She stood with her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the driveway as though waiting for victory to arrive in the form of a police car. Lily remained beside her, head lowered, clearly wishing she could disappear. David turned back toward his lounge chair, trying to keep his breathing steady. The lemonade on the table no longer looked refreshing. The book lay open but unread. He could only sit and wait, listening to the distant hum of the neighborhood, wondering how a peaceful afternoon had changed so quickly. The sky above remained bright and cloudless, a perfect day by any measure. Yet in David's backyard, the air now carried a quiet tension. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but that knowledge did little to ease the ache in his chest. And somewhere not far away, the sound of approaching sirens began to drift faintly on the summer breeze. The faint wail of a siren grew clearer as it neared the quiet neighborhood. David Miller stayed seated near his pool, trying to keep his breathing slow. The afternoon sun still shone brightly, but his peaceful mood from earlier had vanished. Karen stood at the side gate with her arms folded tightly across her chest, a look of stubborn pride fixed on her face. Beside her, Lily shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the street as if hoping this entire scene would simply disappear. The sound of tires on pavement echoed against the houses. A black and white patrol car turned the corner, its lights flashing a steady rhythm of red and blue. Several neighbors peeked through curtains or stepped onto porches. The once quiet street now carried the heavy presence of curiosity and tension. David rose from his chair and walked toward the front yard, his steps calm but deliberate. He had done nothing wrong, yet a small knot of worry tightened in his stomach. He knew the officers would see the truth, but the thought of a misunderstanding still troubled him. The car slowed to a stop near the driveway. Two officers stepped out, a tall man with a steady gaze and a woman with a neat ponytail and a friendly but professional expression. They approached the gate while scanning the surroundings. The taller officer spoke first. Good afternoon. We received a call about a disagreement over pool access. Can someone explain what's happening? Karen quickly stepped forward before David could answer. Yes, thank you for coming. My stepsister is visiting and it's extremely hot. We asked my neighbor to let us use his pool, but he refuses. I believe he's being unfair. This is an emergency for her health. The officers exchanged a brief glance. The female officer nodded politely. Thank you for letting us know. And you are Mr. Miller, David said, keeping his voice even. David Miller. Officers, this is my private property. I told Karen politely that I don't allow guests I don't personally know to use the pool. It's a safety rule and part of my insurance agreement. There was no emergency. I'm not sure why 911 was called. Karen's eyes flashed with a mixture of frustration and embarrassment. It is an emergency, she insisted. It's dangerously hot today and Lily has been traveling for hours. She could get heat exhaustion. The female officer looked toward Lily, who seemed startled to be the center of attention. Miss, are you feeling unwell? Do you need medical assistance? Lily shook her head quickly. No, I'm fine. I'm not even that hot. I never asked for any of this. I told my sister we could just stay inside. The male officer nodded thoughtfully and turned back to Karen. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but using someone else's private pool is not an emergency. If your sister were in distress, we'd gladly help, but she appears fine. Karen's shoulders stiffened. But he's being unreasonable. We're neighbors. Shouldn't neighbors help each other? David took a steady breath before speaking. I help my neighbors whenever I can, but I can't allow someone I don't know to use my pool. It's not personal. It's a responsibility issue. If someone gets hurt, I'm liable. The officers listened carefully. The female officer gave a small, understanding smile. Mr. Miller is correct. This is his private property. He has every right to decide who can or cannot enter. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. A bird chirped somewhere in the maple trees. The sound of distant traffic drifted faintly across the neighborhood. Finally, the male officer addressed Karen again, his voice gentle but firm. Ma'am, we can't compel a homeowner to grant access to their pool. Calling 911 is meant for real emergencies, crimes, medical issues, dangerous situations. This call could have delayed help for someone truly in need. We need to keep the emergency line open for that. Karen's cheeks reddened as several neighbors leaned slightly over their fences, watching. Her earlier confidence began to falter. I thought it was the right thing to do, she murmured. The female officer softened her tone. It's always important to be cautious in the heat, but next time, if someone needs to cool down, there are community centers, public pools, or simply staying indoors with water and a fan. There's no reason to involve the police in a disagreement like this. Lily stepped forward, her voice low but clear. I'm really sorry for all of this, she said, looking at both officers and David. I didn't want to cause trouble. I'm fine. I just wanted to visit my sister for the weekend. David nodded kindly. I know this wasn't your idea, Lily. There's no harm done on your part. The officers gave a few more reminders about using emergency services responsibly. Then the male officer turned to David. Thank you for your patience, sir. You've handled this very calmly. I appreciate you both coming, David replied, meaning it. I know your time is valuable. With a polite nod, the officers returned to their patrol car. The flashing lights disappeared as the vehicle turned the corner, leaving the neighborhood quiet once again. Karen stood still by the gate, staring at the ground. The sound of her own breathing was loud in the sudden silence. Lily gently touched her sister's arm. Karen, she whispered, let's go inside. But Karen remained frozen, her pride caught between anger and shame. David stayed a few steps away, giving her space. He could feel the weight of the moment, the awkwardness of neighbors facing a conflict neither had truly wanted. Finally, Karen lifted her eyes to meet his. Her voice was softer than before. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you were just being stubborn. David kept his tone calm. I understand wanting to help your sister, but boundaries matter. If something happened in my pool, it could be dangerous for everyone. I hope we can still be good neighbors. Karen let out a long sigh, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. Maybe I overreacted, she admitted. I was worried about Lily. I wasn't thinking clearly. Lily gave her sister a small, understanding smile. I'm okay, really. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The quiet hum of summer filled the space between them. A soft breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass from somewhere down the street. Would you like some water before you head back inside? David asked finally, his voice gentle. I have plenty of cold lemonade, too. Karen hesitated, then shook her head slowly. Thank you, but no. I think we'll just go home. All right, David said, offering a small, forgiving smile. Take care of yourselves. And please, no hard feelings, Karen managed a faint nod. No hard feelings, she said, though her voice carried a hint of regret. The sisters turned toward their house, walking side by side. Karen's steps were slower than usual, her earlier energy replaced by quiet reflection. Lily glanced back once and gave David a small wave of apology. David returned the gesture, then closed the gate gently. Back in his backyard, David lowered himself into the lounge chair. The late afternoon light sparkled on the surface of the pool, but the calm he had enjoyed earlier felt different now. He thought about how quickly peace could shift into conflict, how a simple boundary could lead to flashing lights and curious neighbors. He poured himself a glass of lemonade, the ice clinking softly. The sweet, cool drink eased the dryness in his throat. He picked up his book again but didn't open it right away. Instead, he listened to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood returning to normal. the distant laughter of children playing, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint buzz of a lawnmower a few houses away. Though the afternoon had been interrupted, David felt a quiet sense of relief. He had stayed calm. He had held his ground without anger. And even though the day hadn't gone as planned, he knew he had done the right thing. The pool reflected the sky like a giant mirror. For a moment, David simply watched the sunlight dance across the rippling water. It wasn't the peaceful day he had imagined, but it was still his sanctuary, a place where he could breathe, think, and remember that respect for boundaries was worth protecting, even when it was difficult. The evening shadows began to stretch across the yard as the sun drifted lower. David finally opened his book again, letting the steady rhythm of words draw him back toward the quiet he valued. The drama of the day faded slowly, replaced by the gentle comfort of routine. Somewhere next door, Karen and Lily were likely talking things through, maybe even laughing about how unnecessary the whole event had been. David hoped so. He preferred harmony even after tension. The summer air cooled slightly, carrying with it the promise of a calmer night, one that, at last, felt like his own. The evening settled slowly over the neighborhood, painting the sky in wide strokes of orange and pink. David Miller leaned back in his lounge chair, trying to relax as the warm air cooled. The sound of the patrol car had long faded, yet the tension of the day still sat in his chest. He had defended his boundary and stayed calm, but the sudden conflict with Karen left a quiet unease that even the peaceful twilight couldn't wash away. David's backyard pool shimmered like a sheet of glass. Crickets began their nightly chorus, and a single star appeared above the maple trees. Normally, this was the time of day when David felt completely at peace. But tonight his mind wandered. He thought about Karen's determined face, the flashing lights, the neighbors watching from behind curtains. He wondered if they believed he was selfish for keeping the pool private, or if they understood his reasons. Across the fence, the faint hum of voices drifted from Karen's house. Her kitchen window glowed with warm light. David could hear the rise and fall of conversation but couldn't make out the words. He pictured Karen and her stepsister Lily talking about what had happened, perhaps arguing, perhaps laughing about how dramatic it all seemed. He took a slow sip of his lemonade, the glass cool in his hand. Boundaries are important, he whispered to himself, though no one could hear. It wasn't just about rules or insurance. It was about feeling safe in his own space. Still, a small part of him wished the day had unfolded differently. Inside her own home, Karen Bennett paced the living room. The lamps were on, casting gentle light on the tidy space. Lily sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, watching her sister move back and forth. Karen's face showed a mixture of frustration and guilt. "I don't know why he made such a big deal out of it," Karen said, stopping near the window. "It's just a pool. I wasn't trying to start a fight." Lily spoke softly, her voice calm. "Karen, he didn't make a big deal, we did. You called the police." Karen turned, her eyebrows lifting. "I called because I thought it was the only way to get him to listen." "But he was listening," Lily replied gently. He explained his reasons. "And you know what? He wasn't wrong. It's his property." Karen sighed and sat down, resting her elbows on her knees. "I know, I hate feeling like someone is shutting me out." It reminded me of Dad, how he always locked things away after the divorce. "I guess it hit a nerve." Lily reached out and touched her sister's arm. "That's not David's fault. He doesn't know your history. He just knows his own responsibilities." Karen looked down, ashamed. "You're right. I was stubborn. I made it bigger than it needed to be." Back in his yard, David finally closed his book and decided to head inside. The house was quiet, filled with the soft smell of pine from the wooden floors. He set his empty glass in the sink and stared out the kitchen window at the darkening sky. He thought about walking next door to clear the air, but hesitated. Would Karen welcome the gesture, or would it make things worse? As night deepened, the neighborhood lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and then fell silent. David prepared a light dinner, grilled vegetables and a slice of bread, still debating whether to speak to Karen. He didn't like ending the day with tension. Finally, around 8 o'clock, he decided to take a short walk. The summer air felt cooler now, carrying the faint scent of flowers and freshly cut grass. The moon was a pale silver, casting soft light over the sidewalk. David often walked at night to clear his thoughts, And tonight the quiet streets felt especially soothing. As he rounded the corner, he noticed Karen standing on her porch, arms folded but not in anger, more as if she were gathering courage. Lily sat on the steps looking up at the night sky. They both turned when they saw him. "Hi," David said, keeping his voice friendly. Karen hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Hi." For a moment no one spoke. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of a passing car. David finally broke the silence. "I wanted to check in," he said. "I know today was unusual. I hope there are no hard feelings." Karen let out a slow breath. "No hard feelings," she said, her tone softer than it had been all day. "I owe you an apology." "I overreacted," Lily smiled faintly. "That's what I've been telling her." Karen shot her a gentle look, then turned back to David. "I don't know what came over me. I guess I felt protective of my sister. But calling 911, that was too much." "I'm sorry," David nodded. "Thank you for saying that. I understand wanting to look out for family. I never meant to upset you or make you feel unwelcome. I just have to be careful with the pool." Karen's shoulders relaxed. "I get it now. I really do. I think I let old feelings get in the way. It wasn't about you at all." The three of them stood quietly for a moment, the tension slowly melting into the night air. After a while, Karen invited David to sit on the porch. They talked about lighter things, the neighborhood's upcoming block party, the best local coffee shops, the funny habits of the squirrels that often ran along the fences. Lily added soft laughter to the conversation, and soon the earlier conflict felt like a distant memory. David found himself enjoying the simple connection. He realized that despite the rocky afternoon, this might be the first real conversation he had ever shared with Karen. She wasn't just the outspoken neighbor he saw in passing. She was someone with stories, someone who cared deeply about her family. When David finally stood to leave, Karen said, "Thank you for stopping by. It means a lot," he smiled. "Good neighbors should talk even after a disagreement. Have a good night, both of you." "You too," Karen replied, her voice warm. Back at home, David felt a quiet relief. The air inside the house was cool, and the pool outside reflected the moonlight like a sheet of silver. The day had started with calm, shifted to chaos, and ended with understanding. He hadn't planned any of it, but maybe some conflicts brought unexpected connections. Karen and Lily remained on the porch for a long while after David left. Lily tilted her head toward her sister. "You did the right thing apologizing." Karen nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess I needed to learn that lesson. Sometimes I push too hard when I think I'm helping." Lily smiled. "Sometimes we all do." They sat together in silence, listening to the night sounds of the neighborhood. Later, as David prepared for bed, he thought about how easily misunderstandings could grow. A simple no about a swimming pool had turned into flashing lights and curious neighbors. Yet it had also opened the door to a better understanding between him and Karen. He didn't regret standing his ground, but he also felt grateful that they had found peace before the day ended. He turned off the last light and glanced once more at the pool through the window. The water glowed softly in the moonlight, calm and still. David smiled to himself. Boundaries could be respected and neighbors could still find friendship. It was a lesson he hadn't expected, but one he welcomed. The quiet of the night finally settled fully around the street, carrying with it the promise of a gentler tomorrow. The next morning arrived with soft golden light pouring across the neighborhood. Birds sang in the maple trees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh dew. David Miller woke earlier than usual, his mind still thinking about the events of the day before. The memory of flashing police lights had faded, but the conversations with Karen and Lily stayed clear in his thoughts. He brewed a pot of coffee and stood by the kitchen window while it gurgled. Outside, the pool reflected the brightening sky like a sheet of glass. Everything looked peaceful again. David felt thankful for the calm, yet he also sensed that something between him and Karen had shifted, something worth exploring. After a light breakfast of toast and fruit, David decided to take a slow walk through the neighborhood. The morning air was cool and sweet, and the quiet streets carried the soft sound of sprinklers. He enjoyed these walks, greeting neighbors who waved from their porches. People smiled a little more warmly than usual, perhaps remembering the excitement of yesterday. As he turned the corner near Karen's house, he noticed her front door open. Karen stepped onto the porch carrying a small watering can, her hair pulled back and her expression thoughtful. Lily followed behind, holding 2 cups of tea. When Karen saw David, she paused, then smiled a little. "Morning, David." "Morning," he replied, offering a friendly nod. "Beautiful day." "It is," Karen agreed. She hesitated, then said, "Would you like some tea?" Lily made extra. David appreciated the gesture. "Sure, thank you," he said, climbing the steps to the porch. Lily handed him a cup with a quiet smile. They all sat for a moment, listening to the gentle sounds of the neighborhood. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and flowers. Karen looked down at her tea, then met David's eyes. "I keep thinking about yesterday," she said. "I can't believe I let it go that far." David spoke calmly. "It was a stressful moment. We all react sometimes before we think. I'm glad we talked last night." "That meant a lot," Karen nodded. "I'm glad too. You could have stayed angry. Instead, you came over and helped us end it on good terms." "That's rare these days," Lily added softly. "It really is. I've seen smaller problems turn into bigger fights between neighbors." David smiled slightly. "I value peace. We all live close together, so it's better to be kind even when we disagree." The conversation drifted toward lighter topics: the best bakery in town, the upcoming summer fair, and the way the neighborhood children had started building small forts near the old oak tree. They shared gentle laughter, the awkwardness of the past day easing with every word. After a while, Karen's voice grew thoughtful again. "Yesterday taught me something," she said. "I realized I have a habit of pushing when I feel protective. It comes from old memories of my childhood. I thought I had moved past them, but apparently not." David listened carefully. "We all carry old experiences," he said kindly. "Sometimes they show up when we least expect it." Karen looked grateful for his understanding. "I'm working on it," she said quietly. "And I really am sorry. I know that apology might sound small after calling 911, but I mean it." David nodded. "I accept it, truly." Lily smiled and sipped her tea. "I think this might turn out to be a good thing in the end," she said. "It forced us to actually meet as neighbors, not just people who wave from a distance." David chuckled. "You might be right." Later in the morning, Karen invited David to stay for breakfast. He politely declined, but offered an idea instead. "If you'd like," he said, "you and Lily can come by my yard later. We could sit by the pool, not to swim, but just to talk and enjoy the afternoon." "No rules against that." Karen's eyes brightened. "That sounds nice." "Thank you, David." Around midday, they joined him. The sun shone warmly but not too hot, and the water sparkled under the clear blue sky. David brought out a plate of fruit and a pitcher of cold lemonade. The 3 of them settled into chairs beneath a large patio umbrella. For Karen, it felt different being in David's backyard this time. Yesterday, she had stood outside the gate demanding entry. Today, she was welcomed as a guest. The shift in feeling was gentle but powerful. "This is beautiful," Lily said, looking around. "I can see why you value your privacy." David smiled. "It's my little escape from the world. I like sharing it when everyone feels comfortable." They spent the afternoon talking about books, favorite travel spots, and small dreams for the future. Lily shared stories from her college life, while Karen and David compared notes on gardening. The sound of the fountain mixed with the laughter of children playing on the street. As the sun began to dip toward late afternoon, Karen grew quiet. She watched the water ripple and spoke almost to herself. "Yesterday I thought of you as someone shutting people out," she said softly. "Today I see you're someone who takes care of what's important to you. That's different, and I respect it." David appreciated the words. "Thank you, Karen. I try to be careful because I want this place to stay safe, but I never want to seem unfriendly." "You're not," Karen replied with a gentle smile. "I see that now." Lily stretched her arms and added with a laugh, "I'm glad I came to visit. I never expected to be part of a neighborhood story." David chuckled. "Sometimes the unexpected days bring the best lessons," they all agreed. Evening slowly settled again. A light breeze stirred the trees and the first stars appeared in the deepening sky. Karen and Lily prepared to leave, thanking David for the hospitality. "This was a good day," Karen said as she stood. "I feel like we started over." "We did," David replied. "That means a lot to me." Lily gave a small wave. "Maybe next time I visit we can plan a real gathering, one everyone agrees on in advance." David smiled. "I'd like that." They walked back to their house, their figures framed by the warm glow of streetlights. David watched them go, a calm satisfaction settling in his chest. Yesterday's noise and conflict had given way to something far better: understanding, respect, and the beginning of a real friendship. Later that night, David sat by the pool alone, the water reflecting the moon like polished silver. He thought about how quickly life could shift from calm to chaos and back again. What began as a simple no had led to a day of tension, a night of conversation, and now a quiet bond with his neighbors. He realized that boundaries did not have to mean walls between people. They could be lines that, when respected, allowed trust to grow stronger. The crickets sang their steady song, and a soft breeze moved through the trees. David leaned back, breathing deeply. The pool's gentle ripples mirrored the new balance in his heart, peaceful, steady, and open to what tomorrow might bring. Morning sunlight poured gently across the neighborhood, painting every roof and tree in shades of gold. David Miller stepped onto his back porch, stretching as the quiet hum of birdsong filled the air. The memory of yesterday's peaceful gathering with Karen and Lily warmed him. What had started as a sharp conflict now felt like the beginning of something steady and kind. He brewed his usual cup of coffee and walked to the edge of the pool. The surface mirrored the soft blue of the sky, carrying tiny ripples from the fountain. For the first time in many days, David felt completely at ease. He had no lingering tension, no bitter thoughts. Instead, he sensed possibility, a future where neighborly friendship would replace old misunderstandings. Across the street, Karen stood at her window, gazing toward David's yard. She remembered how different it looked only a few days ago, when flashing lights and tense voices filled the evening air. Now the same view brought a small smile. Lily, still in her pajamas, joined her. "Are you thinking about yesterday?" she asked. Karen nodded. "I am. I can't believe how quickly things changed. One day I was ready to argue. The next day we were drinking lemonade by his pool." Lily sipped from her mug of tea and said, "Sometimes we need a strong moment to break old habits. You've always been protective. Maybe this taught you that protecting doesn't always mean fighting." Karen considered her sister's words. "You're right," she admitted. "I'm learning." Late that morning, Karen decided to cross the street. She held a small basket of fresh muffins she had baked, blueberry and cinnamon, still warm. Lily followed, curious to see David's reaction. David greeted them with a friendly wave as they approached. "Good morning, neighbors," he said warmly. "What's this?" "A peace offering," Karen replied with a playful smile. "Or maybe just breakfast." "I wanted to thank you again," David chuckled. "You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did. They smell amazing." They settled around the patio table as David brought out 3 cups of coffee. The morning breeze danced lightly, carrying the scent of muffins and damp grass. For a while, they enjoyed simple conversation. The weather, weekend plans, and a few light jokes about how quickly rumors spread in their quiet neighborhood. As they ate, David shared something he rarely mentioned. "When I first moved here," he said thoughtfully, "I worried about keeping this place private. Not because I didn't want friends, but because this pool and yard were my escape from a busy world. I work long hours and I need a space to breathe." Karen listened carefully. "That makes sense," she said. "I misread that privacy as distance. I thought maybe you didn't want to connect with anyone." David smiled gently. "I can see how it looked that way. But it's never been about shutting people out. It's about keeping a bit of calm." Lily nodded. "Sometimes quiet can look like loneliness, but it isn't." David appreciated her understanding. "Exactly," he said. Their talk turned to community plans. The neighborhood was preparing for its annual summer block party, a cheerful event with food stalls, music, and games for the children. "I was going to skip it this year," David admitted, "but now I think I'll join in. Maybe I can even bring something." Karen's eyes brightened. "That would be wonderful. It's a good way for everyone to see the real you, not just the man behind the tall fence." They laughed together, the old tension fully replaced by easy friendship. In the afternoon, a few other neighbors stopped by. First came Mrs. Langley from 2 houses down, carrying a basket of garden vegetables. Then Mr. and Mrs. Patel arrived with their young twins, curious about the small gathering. News of yesterday's friendly visit had traveled quickly, and everyone wanted to join the new warmth. David welcomed them all, setting extra chairs around the patio. Soon the backyard echoed with gentle conversation and children's laughter. The once private space became a lively circle of neighbors sharing stories, snacks, and plans for the block party. Karen watched the scene with quiet pride. Only a day earlier, she had stood outside this very gate feeling angry and misunderstood. Now she saw children chasing bubbles near the fountain and adults smiling as they traded recipes. Lily leaned toward her sister and whispered, "You see what you started?" Karen raised an eyebrow. "Me? Yes," Lily teased. "If you hadn't knocked on that gate, well, maybe not exactly like you did, none of this would be happening." Karen laughed softly. Maybe chaos can have a purpose after all. As the sun dipped lower, David noticed how easily everyone mingled. He felt no regret for opening his yard. Instead, he felt grateful. It struck him that his boundaries had not been broken. They had simply widened to include trust. Before sunset, the neighbors thanked David and promised to see him at the upcoming block party. The backyard grew quiet again, but a new kind of silence filled the space, one alive with the memory of shared laughter and goodwill. Karen and Lily stayed behind for a few minutes. They helped clear the table and gather the empty cups. When the last plate was stacked, Karen turned to David. "I want to say something before we go," she began. Her voice carried a mix of strength and softness. "When I called 911 that night, I thought I was protecting my family. I didn't realize I was creating distance instead of safety. Yesterday and today showed me how important understanding is. So thank you for your patience, for giving us a chance to start again." David met her gaze, his expression warm. "And thank you," he replied, "for being willing to talk, to listen, and to try again." "That's what matters," Lily smiled. "I'd call that a real neighborly victory." They all laughed, the sound easy and genuine. Evening slowly settled, painting the sky in shades of pink and violet. As Karen and Lily walked home, David stood at his gate watching them go. He felt something deeper than relief, something like hope. He realized the pool that once served only as a private retreat had become a bridge, connecting lives that might have remained separate. He thought about the lesson hidden inside the conflict. Clear boundaries were important, but so were open hearts. The moon rose quietly, casting a silver glow over the calm water. David sat beside the pool, the soft splash of the fountain a steady rhythm in the night. He reflected on the week's journey, from a tense misunderstanding to a warm friendship. Karen, in her own home across the street, prepared for bed with a peaceful mind. She no longer felt the need to protect through argument. Instead, she carried a new confidence, knowing that respect and conversation built stronger safety than any confrontation ever could. Lily texted David a quick message before sleeping. "Thanks for everything today." "Looking forward to the block party," David replied with a simple smile emoji and placed his phone aside. He breathed in the cool night air, grateful for neighbors who had become friends. The days that followed remained calm and bright. The block party arrived, bringing music and laughter to every corner of the street. David surprised everyone by bringing a tray of his own homemade lemonade and a small bouquet of flowers. For Karen, as a quiet gesture of friendship. Children splashed in a temporary water play area while adults shared dishes and stories. Karen and David found themselves laughing together more than once. No longer strangers, but neighbors who understood one another. When evening fell and lanterns glowed along the sidewalks, David looked around and felt a deep contentment. The conflict that had begun with a firm no to an unexpected request had ended with something far more meaningful. A stronger bond, a clearer respect, and a neighborhood united by kindness. He glanced across the crowd and caught Karen's eye. She raised her glass in a small salute. David returned the gesture with a nod and an easy smile. In that simple exchange, both knew the truth. What once felt like a sharp divide had become a bridge, a reminder that patience, listening, and forgiveness could turn even the most awkward beginning into a lasting friendship.